It's time to begin working on one of my personal favorite storylines here at Comicstorian. Now bear in mind, this storyline is different from the game and movie timelines, so treat it as if it's its own, just like the Akuma one that we did a while ago. If you have no idea where you are, well, this is Comicstorian, and we break down some of your favorite comics into recaps with music, voiceover, and sometimes sound effects. If you enjoy it, stick around, but I'm gonna get started on this Street Fighter story from Udon. It's been 60 days since the event where Charlie Nash went missing. Guile sits in his office at the US Interpol headquarters in San Francisco asking himself what could have happened on the mission that made him lose one of his best friends. The higher-ups have told him to just accept the fact that Charlie is gone, but that is something that Guile just cannot grasp. Elsewhere in San Francisco, Ryu walks into a manor holding a picture comparing it to one that his childhood friend Ken sent him. As the wind begins to blow by, Ryu hears Ken's voice telling him how he's waited for this day for so long. With a running jump, Ken kicks Ryu, but before it can hit, Ryu catches it and blocks the attack. Ken continues kicking and swinging, but with each strike, Ryu either dodges or easily deflects the hits. Ken asks, "Why aren't you fighting back?" And Ryu catches a punch and tells Ken, "I'm not here to play games. Something's happened." Before Ryu can even go into it, Ken's fiancée Eliza walks outside asking what on earth is he doing here? Ken calls back that he was just finishing up some training when Ryu happened to walk up. She remembers him, right? Eliza then runs down saying how it's good that he finally found the time to visit, and Ryu tells her that he isn't here just to visit. Their master has been murdered. Back over in Guile's office, Officer Gibson walks in saying that she's got the Shadaloo reports like he was asking. Not much has changed from their normal operations from weapons and drug trafficking, but there might be something to look into. Shadaloo has recently been rather interested in a man named Ryu. Guile thinks on the name and says that that's the guy who defeated Bison's right-hand man Sagat in the Street Fighter tournament a few years back, right? Gibson goes on saying that they also found out that Ryu has just touched down in San Francisco this morning. But as Gibson goes through the files to pull out a photo of Ryu, Guile receives a phone call and he tells the person on the other line that he'll be right there. He quickly heads out of his office telling Gibson that there's been some Shadaloo activity. She can debrief him once he gets back. And later that night, Ryu sits with Ken and Eliza in a restaurant and they explain what happened in Japan. While he was training outside, he heard a cry coming from the dojo, and quickly as he could, he ran inside. As he looked around, he could tell that a battle had just taken place. However, when he saw their master brutally defeated and murdered, he then looked above his body to see the character Ten, or Sky, Heaven, was written, obviously leaving a message. But as to what it means, he does not know. The reason he has come here is because he wanted to get some help in avenging their master's death. But before Ken can even answer, there's a loud crash as the door to the restaurant is kicked in, and a giant man named Birdie makes his way to the counter. Birdie grabs the cashier, telling him that he's the new guy in town. His name is Birdie, and he runs the group known as Shadaloo. He's here to collect on his protection money, and maybe a few spring rolls while he's at it. The cashier tells him no, and after slapping the man, Birdie pulls back to hit him again, but this time Ryu gets up and stops the hit. Just then, Guile and a few other officers run in shouting for everyone to freeze. They'll handle things from here. Ken grabs Ryu, telling him that they should head out. The authorities are here, and this really isn't their fight. But as Ryu walks by, Guile looks at him and the two lock eyes. In that moment of distraction, though, Birdie jumps at Guile, pulling out his chains, telling him, "I'm not going to give up so easily." Birdie begins to swing aimlessly, and then he slams on the ground right where Guile is standing. But as Guile lands from dodging, he combs his hair, telling him, "I was looking for Shadaloo agents, but instead I found a bunch of wannabes." Birdie jumps at Guile screaming, and Guile just smiles and kicks Birdie away using a flash kick. Just as Guile ends the fight, another one of the thugs breaks away from an officer and begins to run. Once he gets outside, he checks to see if anyone's coming, but as he steps out, he's hit with a series of kicks. Agent Chun-li stands over the man, telling him that she understands that he works for Shadaloo. Moments later, Guile runs back out looking at the thug and then sees Chun-li standing over the man's body. He tells her, "Nice work there, but who are you?" Chun-li takes out her badge and tells him that her name is Chun-li from Interpol, Hong Kong Division, and she's been following some Shadaloo leads when she ran into this guy. Guile tells her that he's also with Interpol, but what brings her all the way out here? Chun-li says that she's actually supposed to be meeting the commander, Charlie Nash, in a few days. Guile then asks, "Wait, what? Charlie? Charlie was my friend and he's gone missing. All I know is that Bison is involved, and that's why I'm working on the case." Chun-li shouts, "Bison? You have to tell me everything you know about him." A little while later, back at Ken's home, Ryu lays asleep dreaming of a time when he was a child. He remembers seeing his master Guken fighting with his brother Akuma, and Guken quickly won the battle. After being struck down, Akuma shouts to his brother, telling him to finish him, and Guken says that he will not. He teaches these arts to preserve life, not destroy it. As Akuma puts back on his gi, he tells Guken that the mercy that he has shown is a weakness. And as he walks away, Ryu sees the character on the back of the gi, Ten, and that's when he wakes up. A short while later, Ryu tells Ken about the dream, and then he says that he'll be returning to Japan to continue his research. Ken says that obviously he's going with him, and Eliza says that he's not going anywhere without her. But while Ken goes in to prepare for a flight, outside the agent Killer Bee of Shadaloo reports back that Bison that their target is headed to Japan. Bison tells her, "That's good. Vega will handle things from here." The next morning, Guile sits with Chun-li in his office, and Chun-li explains that she's working on a case on Bison because her father was working undercover for them when they got caught, and that was about 6 months ago. Guile says that Bison really has a way of screwing up people's lives, huh? Unfortunately, though, we have no leads on Bison himself, only that he's looking for a man named Ryu. Chun-li looks at the reports and says, "Actually, that was the guy at the restaurant the other night." Guile grabs the reports, shouting, "What?" And he grabs the phone and he yells to whoever's on the other line to get him the last known location of the man named Ryu. At that moment, Guile slams the phone back down and says that it seems that Ryu is heading to Japan. It's time for them to go find out what happened to Charlie and her father. The following day in the busy streets of Shibuya, Vega reports to Bison that finding Ryu is taking longer than expected. His little Killer Bee was sloppy and lost track of him already. Bison tells him that Killer Bee and the dolls are none of his concern. They have not failed him before, and it would be wise for him to not either. And then he hangs up. Vega puts his phone back in his coat and he says Ryu is supposed to be Japan's greatest warrior, huh? And then he looks up and sees a sign stating that Japan's #1 warrior is inside. Vega says, "Huh, well that was convenient." He walks inside and he sees a crowd of people gathered around having their books signed by the great Edmund Honda. He walks through everyone up to the table saying, "How could someone with such ugliness possibly know greatness? I'm looking for Ryu, Japan's finest martial artist, and here I find a fat diapered slob." E. Honda then takes off his robe and he asks Vega if he would care to back up those words with actions then. Vega laughs as he puts his mask on and E. Honda quickly launches himself forward. After gracefully dodging and weaving through E. Honda's attack, Vega grabs E. Honda from behind and then he jumps up, slamming his head onto the ground. Vega holds out his claws, but then gets up, putting on his coat, saying, "Normally, I would finish you off, but your ugliness is punishment enough." As he walks out, he looks at his reflection, admiring his own beauty when he sees Ken standing behind him, and decides to start a search with him. Over at Guken's gravestone, Akuma feels the blast of power coming from Ryu's dreams, and he asks if Guken felt that as well. "That was the power that you were afraid to embrace." After picking up Guken's beads, Akuma places them around his neck and he walks off. Back in the current times, Vega walks through the crowds and he mistakenly bumps into Eliza. As she drops her things, Vega begins to pick them up and he hands her back a scarf that she had bought. However, what she doesn't see is the small transmitter that he's placed inside of it. After handing her a rose, he says, "I hope that one day soon I will be graced again with your radiance." After gathering their things, Ken says that guy was lucky that I'm not the jealous type. Did he really just call you a fair lady? Eliza waves the rose at him saying, "You know, I wouldn't mind you calling me that once in a while." But as the night begins to fall, Eliza waits in the hotel room telling Ken that he needs to hurry up with their food. She wants to show him some of the things that she bought today. Suddenly there's a buzz at the door and Eliza says that she needs to go. The drinks that she ordered for them are there. As she hangs up, Eliza runs over to open the door and she gasps when she sees what's behind it. Vega rips the door lock off, slamming the door open, telling her, "Greetings, you have something that I need." While Ken begins to head back upstairs, Vega is pinning down Eliza in her bed, telling her that he will not harm her, as long as you tell me what I want. Then, just outside, Ken turns the corner and sees the door open and he runs in shouting for Eliza. Vega turns back, stating, "It seems our little friend is near." And Eliza jumps up and slaps Vega off of her. He pulls down his mask, shouting, "How dare you touch the face of Vega!" Just as he gets ready to cut her face, Ken quickly runs in, grabbing and throwing Vega off. As Vega lands, he begins to roll forward, swiping at Ken's legs. Vega stops himself and jumps up, then jumps off the ceiling. Ken kicks up to knock the claws away, but as they fly from Vega's fist, they shoot by, cutting the side of Eliza's neck. Ken runs over to check on her, and Vega makes a break for it, telling him, "You should be more careful." Ken screams out in rage, and as Vega goes to attack, he turns back, cracking Vega in the side of the head with his foot. Then he prepares himself for a spinning kick, and he launches Vega out of the balcony. As Vega begins his retreat, the shadow of Charlie watches, and Bison tells him, "Do not engage." Later at the hospital, Eliza lays in bed telling Ken that he hasn't said a word since the ambulance ride. He sighs, telling her that he almost got her killed tonight, all because of his fighting. She reaches out, telling him that if he hadn't shown up, then she would definitely be dead. Besides, right now, he needs to hurry and get to the dojo and warn Ryu of what's happening. Meanwhile, 10 miles south at Guken's dojo, Guile and Chun-li pull up, and Chun-li says that that was a bit of a hike. They should probably come back in the morning. Guile says that that's actually a good idea. By the way, do you know of any place that we can go and grab something to eat? Chun-li turns over to a vending machine and says clearly he has not experienced the glories of Japanese vending machines. Ramen good? Guile tells her yeah, and then he turns back to see the shadow of Charlie. Guile runs down the alleyway where the shadow is standing, and Chun-Li quickly runs after him. But as they get into the alleyway, she begins to hear someone yell, "Sonic Boom!" And she's thrown to the ground. When she looks up, she sees Charlie holding Guile's body. She asks him if it's really him, and Charlie tells her, "Negative. My name is Agent Shadow." Now that is the first part of Street Fighter 1 through 6. It's a volume that you can buy, but because it's so long, I basically wanted to do 1 through 3 and see if you guys are even interested in the continued story of the actual Street Fighter storyline. I know a lot of people enjoyed the Akuma origins, but that doesn't mean you want to hear the entire Street Fighter storyline. So we're starting here with the 1 through 3. If you enjoy it, give this video a like, share it with your friends, let us know, hey, Benny, I want more Street Fighter, and that's how you're gonna get more Street Fighter. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Comicstorian, and subscribe to the channel if you want more recapped comic books in general. I'll see you guys next time right here.